For years, people have been trying to decipher the lyrics of their favourite songs. It's one thing to sing along with your favourite tune when it comes up on a playlist, but it's completely different when you try and figure out what the band were really trying to say. There have been many profound rock songs throughout the years, but there is also no shame in writing something meaningless. Though acts like Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen pride themselves on writing some of the most engaging poetry the rock world has ever heard, it's just as easy to get your audience to pay attention if you have a catchy melody to stick in their brains. People may think these bands are trying to get at something more cerebral with their wordplay, but the real answer to all your questions is nothing. The song means nothing. With that in mind, I'm Will for WhatCulture, and here are 10 rock songs that mean absolutely nothing. 10. Making Memories, Rush. Out of all the prog bands of the 70s, Rush almost prided themselves on being the most literate of the bunch. With drummer and resident genius Neil Peart writing the band's lyrics, these long songs have become miniature tales of grandeur, talking about everything from extraterrestrial travel to medieval duels between man and animal. On the other hand, you have Making Memories, which is still a good song. The only issue is in the lyrics, which showed Peart still coming into his own as a lyricist. Instead of being another bold step forward, the only subject this song manages to come up with is the pleasures of touring, with Peart really just writing the line, "I love the road." Granted, many bands have gotten by with far less substantial lyrics, but when your other material is comprised of impressive conceptual works, this lyric sheet feels like it should have been left on the cutting room floor. 9. Black Hole Sun, Soundgarden. Black Hole Sun has been one of the staples of modern rock radio for a while. After years of being the outliers of the big four of grunge, Soundgarden had a huge smash that seemed to combine the tunefulness of the Beatles with the stomping power of Black Sabbath. It's a shame the band couldn't find any connections in the lyrics though. That's not to say they're horrible. Throughout the song's progression, the words, while pretty, feel like Chris Cornell is just doing random word association than telling a story. In an interview, he all but confirmed our suspicions. When asked what the song means, he replied he didn't have the faintest idea. Whenever it's brought up again, Cornell always states that he was more or less painting with words rather than trying to write anything coherent. 8. Message to Harry MANBACK, Tool. As the 90s went on, Tool was getting more and more experimental with their sound. Though they'd already bludgeoned the metal world with their debut Undertow, their follow-up Anemia showed them getting much more artsy, which would culminate in their 2000s masterpieces like Lateralis and 10,000 Days. Anemia clearly has a lot to say, but each track wasn't necessarily thought-provoking. In the midst of the interlude tracks, A Message to Harry MANBACK comes on with a beautiful piano section. Once you're lulled into the song, a distorted voice can be heard ranting at someone. Now, you might think that a band that focuses on more cerebral music would have a more eloquent meaning behind this, but this just ended up being another example of Tool trolling the audience. Rather than come up with actual lyrics or a vocal melody behind the piano section, the disembodied voice is actually a voicemail that was on Maynard James Keenan's answering machine from one of his former housemates, who was not pleased about being asked to leave. To be honest, with Tool getting more experimental by the minute, it's almost a relief to hear that they still have a bit of humour about themselves and their work. 7. Take Me to the Pilot, Elton John. The songwriting pair of Elton John and Bernie Taupin is one of the most legendary in rock history. Although Elton is known as the flamboyant superstar behind the music, Bernie Taupin's words are some of the most hard-hitting of the 70s, from the loneliness of Rocket Man to the wistfulness of Your Song. Each of these could be considered pure poetry, but there are even some songs that the writers can't decipher. On John's second self-titled release, Take Me to the Pilot is one of the record's greatest deep cuts, whose groove works wonders when paired with Elton's delivery. However, Taupin has always been open about the fact that the lyrics were total nonsense from day one. After turning it over to his songwriting partner, Taupin himself welcomed other artists' interpretations of his lyrics, boldly claiming, quote, "If someone could tell me what this song's about, that'd be great." The song might not be saying much, but when the music is still this awesome, any lyrical shortcomings can be forgiven. 6. Monsters in the Parasol, Queens of the Stone Age. As the noughties got underway, Queens of the Stone Age quickly rose to the top of the hard rock heap. From their low-down and dirty tunes to their tales of lust and sin laced throughout their lyrics, almost anything seemed like a good time when filtered through the laid-back tone of Queens of the Stone Age. The aura of the band was so badass that they almost trick you into thinking that Monsters in the Parasol has a deeper meaning. Just from the title alone, you know that you're in for something monolithic in scope. But once the lyrics kick in, you quickly realize that the song is a fragmented mess. Apparently, they come from Josh Homme's first experience tripping on acid. Though the experience was joyous at first, Hommy's vision became much more frightening once his friend's parents got home, which culminated in monsters, parasols, and plenty of other things covered in hair. This lyric sheet is nothing more than word painting, but the music itself has all the slinky swagger of a snake slithering across the desert floor. 5. Fairies Wear Boots, Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath's Paranoid was one of the most pivotal records in heavy metal history. While Sabbath had already started to cultivate their eerie sound on their self-titled album, this follow-up showed that metal was here to stay, with brilliant wordplay from Geezer Butler on songs like War Pigs and Iron Man. Though Fairies Wear Boots closes everything up perfectly, the lyrics make you see the song in a completely different light. The title itself comes from an experience Ozzy Osbourne had with a gang of skinheads who beat him up for having long hair. To get his own form of payback, this song was initially constructed as a diss at these macho gang members by calling them fairies. That alone is a great start to a hard rock song, but the band sort of painted themselves into a corner after the first verse. Instead of following on with this direction, Geezer Butler ended up writing the rest of the song about being stoned on illegal substances, which has virtually no lead-in. Instead of being the lyrical apex of the record, Fairies Wear Boots feels like the start of two good lyrics that were haphazardly smashed together. 4. This Is a Call, Foo Fighters. After Kurt Cobain's tragic suicide in 1994, the alternate music scene was left in shambles. Though many grunge bands still continued on, the real innocence of the scene had been lost forever. Rock seemed to be fractured, but Dave Grohl's first step up to the mic with Foo Fighters showed some light was at the end of the tunnel. With some of the greatest riffs of the 90s, the album must be filled with lyrics that will pull us out of the doldrums, right? Well, no. Even though Grohl had been secretly working on his own songs while still in Nirvana, he had not completely honed his craft when it came to lyrics. Across the band's first record, most of the lyrics were thrown together by Grohl, more for their sound than what they actually mean. Any song off the record probably could have been a candidate, but This Is a Call is the clearest indicator of the album's lack of message. With allusions to balloons, magic markers, and calling out to someone, none of these themes come together to form anything meaningful. 3. Champagne Supernova, Oasis. Oasis's sudden rise to the top of the Britpop world in the 90s was nothing short of biblical. Just like the initial British invasion had done a few decades prior, these boys from Manchester ended up taking the sound of their heroes like the Beatles and injecting with it the right amount of punk attitude and psychedelic tendencies. In the grand scheme of Oasis tunes, Champagne Supernova is their opus, but the lyrics from Noel Gallagher owe a lot more to drug use than any real meaning. From the constant question of where were you while we were getting high, to being caught underneath a landslide, the entire song seems to be floating just on the edge of existence from start to finish. The raw melodic perfection behind this track is so good that you tend to forget how these lyrics are actually kind of stupid. Sure, it might sound profound when you're stoned out of your mind, but this one is a little underwhelming lyrically coming from the gods of rock at the time. 2. I Am the Walrus, The Beatles. The Beatles are literally the main reason why many lyricists upped their game at the end of the 60s. Covering everything from existentialism to storytelling to the inner workings of love, almost nothing was off the table when it came time for Lennon, McCartney or Harrison to write a tune. However, John Lennon's wit tended to show up from time to time. As the band started writing songs during the era of Sgt. Pepper's, Lennon got word that school teachers across England were analysing the band's lyrics to decipher what they really meant. This was also the time that many people were speculating as to whether Paul McCartney had died or not. Amused and frustrated with the entire concept, Lennon wrote I Am the Walrus to deliberately mess with the skeptics who were trying to figure him out. While the song is already a tremendous feat from a production standpoint, the lines are all over the place, from sitting on a cornflake to watching custard drip from a dead dog's eye. It is mental, it means nothing, and it's beautiful. 1. Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen. Bohemian Rhapsody has become so ingrained in modern music culture that it's almost become a cliche. Even with its near 6-minute runtime and many different movements, this masterpiece of rock and roll hasn't lost its luster after nearly 50 years. The narrative starts off fairly strong, as it tells the tale of a young man who has killed someone and is now forced to run away from home. But after the guitar solo, things start to get a little more loopy. Going into calls to the astrologer Galileo and using other verbiage such as Bismillah, the song almost seems to go on a completely different tangent depending on what part you're up to. There is no real cut and dry story behind the song, but any kind of convoluted wordplay would only distract from the musical perfection going on behind it. Sure, it means nothing, but it doesn't really need to when the backing track is already fantastic. While many fans can pick out the stories behind their favourite songs, Bohemian Rhapsody is the one track that is so badass it literally doesn't need to mean anything to totally blow everyone away.
And there you have it, folks, 10 rock songs that mean absolutely nothing. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and drop me a follow on Twitter at YouSlyDawU. I'm Will for WhatCulture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.